He's been having some trouble with his... internet connection. The other day, he was getting kicked out and coming in and out. Let's just let him get back in. Get him some help, I think. Okay. So, my plan for today is to highlight a couple of things that I felt were really important. Hopefully you all managed to take Monday's time to read through this chapter and learn maybe some new ideas. As I said, I'll highlight a couple of things. Please jump in and ask questions or share your ideas about the chapter because that will make this more fun as a class if it's not just me talking for the next 40 minutes. All right? So jump in and out anytime you've got something to share. Okay? Will you get in? Oh yeah, good. Okay, so let me show the screen here. Okay. So chapter 1, I think, is really well put together. They kind of introduce some concepts that then we look into in more depth through the rest of the chapters. So there's some useful tips here. So why do we need a class about health and wellness? Right? That's, I think, the first place to start. And I think often it's because some of you may have had some health classes in school before you came to college, others of you may not. But even if you did have classes then, I don't think it's always easy to translate that information from when you were kind of a teenager and you were living at home and you weren't really in charge, or at least most of you probably weren't in charge of what meals were cooked and ready for you, and the environment in the house was not something you had control over, and your timetable at school and things like this. So I don't think, although I think it's an important idea to give health classes in school, I think there might be some disconnect between that information and how you're organizing yourself now. So, and the research indicates that the sooner you start to take care of yourself, the better your long-term outcomes are. All right? So, personally, although I trained very hard when I was in college, I was very active physically. I didn't have a lot of friends. I did not have a lot of time to get home and spend with my family. And I wasn't very well organized with school, so school was always a bit of a disaster. And, it wasn't really until I was much older that I realized some of the things I needed to do to make sure that I was okay, right? Because if I'm not okay, then I'm not any good to anybody else. So, good health means that we can function independently. So we're talking good health across the lifespan, not just now, right? But what about if we live long enough and we're into our 80s, you know, do we want to be an 80-year-old grandparent who sits at home and doesn't really go out, and other people do their shopping and bring it in for them, and you know they don't really have much independence there? Or do we want to be an 80-plus-year-old who, you know, goes walking every day and can do their own shopping and pick it up and put it in the car, and just generally be able to socialize and get outside, right? I know which one I would choose. So we're not talking just now, right? And the difference between, at least in this textbook, which is something I like, the difference between health and wellness means that I'm not just independent and adequately functioning in my environment, I'm functioning at my absolute best, right? So that's something we can aim for, I think, right? That can be a goal. Can I organize myself so that I'm really at my best in everything that I'm looking at? And these ideas are holistic, right? We have to consider it's not just my physical fitness that I should be concerned about. There are many other things that interact and overlap to provide health and wellness, right? So I want you to think of what, consider for yourself and share if you want to. What do you think of as healthy? When you hear that term, what does that mean for you? Okay.
For me, it kind of means just eating right, exercising on a daily basis.
Okay. So, as I was when I was your age, it's really geared around my physical activity and making sure that I'm moving every day. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got a couple of fun film clips to show you. Film clips are always a good plan in class, I think. Let's see. Get out there. And then... I'll show you this one first. Okay. So, I've got a couple of film clips to maybe start to push your ideas, right? So remember last week when we were doing the introduction to class, I said that this class is really about you and your learning curve and maybe expanding your ideas of what you should be taking care of, right? Expanding boundaries about what's acceptable, not acceptable perhaps. And really, I want it to be a safe learning place where you can say, as long as you're respectful, right, you can pretty much say anything, right? It's not going to go outside of this classroom, right? So you can share, if you want to, some experiences, or you can keep those to yourself, but, maybe broaden your perspective of those experiences at times, all right? So what I want to show you is something to maybe just start to push those edges a little bit about what is healthy, right? What does wellness across the lifespan really mean, okay? So let me make this big. And just a couple of very short film clips. to give you something to think about. So that's pretty cool. And then the other one,
we just had the most amazing family vacation. Oh my God, this is gorgeous. Argo makes it super easy to find the perfect vacation house.
I love watching that.
ESPN Plus come to life on all your screens. Transform your world with 3 incredible.
Okay. So what are your thoughts when you watch that?
It was kind of cool that people who are older and people who are kind of have a disability can still perform pretty well.
Yeah, right? Because I think that subconsciously, right? I'm not saying we do any of this deliberately, but I think somewhere in the back of our minds we consider those two populations, people in a wheelchair and old, elderly people, to kind of not be healthy, right? We don't really always consider those people maybe even needing to be healthy, right? So I think it's quite interesting to watch those and go, wow, look what, if we provide the opportunity, and if you as individuals across your lifespan, really take care of yourselves, right, in a holistic manner, think about, these two situations, then if I fall into one of those situations, then I can still take care of myself, right? I think that's what I take home from watching those. Okay, let's go back to our next. Is that coming up for you guys? It's weird, if I click back it comes up. Okay. Okay, so our book has a model for health and wellness that is 6-dimensional, right? I just wanted to show you an 8-dimensional, so if you Google health and wellness models, you can get them from 4 dimensions up to about 10 dimensions. So there's various different models out there that you could utilize if you wanted to. I wanted to show you this one because it has a couple of, it has one in particular extra dimension that I really think is important, and that's our occupational wellness, right? So are we satisfied at work? You know, do we go to work every day dreading it? Are we bored every day? Are we stressed every day? Or do we go to work and work hard and leave with a feeling of satisfaction and, you know, I achieved something? So that's an important element, I believe, because most of us are going to spend a large amount of our day at work, right, for a very long time. So my approach has generally been, I try to make my work play, because, you know, I don't have time in my life to be at work. Ugh. Right? This is my third career at the age of 57. My first career was coaching, and then my second career was finance, which was deadly, and thank goodness I got a window to escape, because that was work. You know, that was a situation where the alarm would go off every day, and I would lie in bed, and I'd lay there and think, what do I have to do today? Is there anything important? Is there a deadline today? Is anybody going to miss me if I just don't turn up today? Right? God, it was awful. It was really bad. Because for me, I'm a mover. You know, going to an office and sitting in an office all day, every day, 5 days a week was just killing me. So I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to get out of that, and here I am, career number 3, which I love, right? I love teaching. It's so fun, and watching you guys grow and change and learn is just really amazing. So I'm very lucky to have had the opportunity to change again and be able to make a living at something new, right? The other one that I think is slightly better highlighted on this model from the model in the book is the emotional one. Are we coping effectively with our life and our relationships? Okay. So as I said, it's not a right or a wrong. There's just different models out there. And this is the model from the book, which is a 6-component model, 6-domain. And I liked this model for the very reason that they subset everything, all these different domains within the environment, right? So the idea is that my physical health, that's my, you know, for this model, physical health is your overall physical condition. You know, are all your systems functioning well? Is your cardiovascular system healthy? Is your respiratory system healthy? You know, are you strong? Are you in, you know, decent cardio shape? Interestingly, you don't necessarily have to be a thin, skinny athlete to be healthy, right? You can be someone who's carrying a lot more weight and still be healthy if you work on that cardiovascular system. So that, I think, you know, if you're an athlete, I know in this class, because it's not an HPE content class, we have people from all across campus, which is part of the fun, because we get to have some very different conversations in this class than I do in my other content classes. But, you know, it's an interesting idea that I don't have to fit that mold in order to be healthy. Okay? Psychological health is looking at your mental health. You know, can you deal effectively with the challenges that get thrown at you? Okay? So you guys have to jump in and talk sometimes, otherwise by the end of the semester you're going to know everything about me, because I like to apply stuff to real experiences. So I have mental health issues. I suffer with depressive episodes and generalized anxiety disorder. So I have to be very careful how I manage my time. I have to make sure I take my meds every day. I have to make sure that I meditate or that I have some quiet space every day. I need to move every day, otherwise that gets really bad, right? So these are strategies that I have to make time for and space for in order to be healthy enough to be a good teacher and to enjoy my teaching, right? So it's a juggling act for me to keep that part of my health and wellness healthy, right? Social health is your sense of well-being, you know, do I have emotional support? So from my friends, from my family, from my partner, if there's a partner in the picture, do I manage to have, you know, if I'm having a bad day, is there someone I can reach out to who's going to kind of give me a hug and go, it'll be okay, you know? Intellectual health, so is there some stimulation? Can I problem solve, right? Do I have higher order thinking skills that I use, right? So it's not just the fact that as humans, we have the capability for these higher order thinking skills, but we have to actually use them in order to maintain that health for that domain, right? So that's why you might read, again, there's quite a lot of research that says, you know, as you get older, it's really important to keep reading, do crosswords, do puzzles, you know, do things that challenge you intellectually, because they're really good for maintaining brain health and intellectual health, right? And then spiritual health. Spiritual health is an interesting one, I think, because it depends where you come from and what your belief systems are, right? Am I part of a bigger picture? Doesn't have to be religion. It can be religion, right? But you can have spiritual health without being religious, right? Those two don't depend on each other, but for many people, their religion is what supports their spiritual health, right? So again, it's not this is right and this is wrong, it's just different approaches to how do we manage our spiritual health. Do we manage our spiritual health, right? When I was your age, I said that was not even on my radar, right? I didn't even think about that. I was too busy training every day, right? So I certainly did not take care of that element of my health when I was younger. And then environmental health. So the perspective that our textbook takes is that environmental health is really has the biggest impact, because without environmental health, we can't manage any of the other domains, right? So the quality of our wellness can be significantly impacted by the state of the environment that we have to spend our time in. You know, what are the conditions that I live in? Is it safe? Is it clean? Right? Can I afford it? Where do I work? Again, is it safe? Is it supportive? Or is it a workplace where I'm being put down all the time, right? And where do I play? Okay? So what's fun about this model, I think, is that they overlap everything, right? So we can see, guys, you know when you talk, when you make a comment, if you could tell me who it is so that I can talk to you by name rather than this empty space I have here, that would be great. You can see that this physical domain is really important. It overlaps everything, right? Where our intellectual domain might interact with psychological, spiritual, and physical, but in this particular model, our intellectual domain does not interact with our social domain. So they're saying those two things don't have as much relationship to each other, right? But physical and psychological go over everything, and the whole gang is based on this environmental wellness. What do you think about that?
Is it okay if you repeat the question?
Oh, I was just wondering what you think about this idea that everything fits within our environment. So if our environment isn't healthy, isn't safe, isn't supportive, then all our other domains of health are impacted, and it's much harder to maintain health in those other areas.
Oh, I say that's true though.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
go
on.
I wouldn't want to go to work if I was scared to go to work and have to worry about that's before I go on the way to work.
Yeah. And, you know, for a lot of people, they do go to work every day in a situation where they don't feel necessarily safe. And that doesn't have to be physically safe, right? It could be psychologically safe. So if you go to work and your boss is mean, right, and he deliberately does things to stop you growing in your job, for example, because he doesn't want competition, he or she does not want competition for their job, so they keep you in your place all the time, or they're always telling you you're not good enough at the job, you're not working fast enough, or you're not getting enough done, or, right? So it's not just, it can be physical safety in certain situations, right? Some people have work scenarios where they're being physically abused, right? So, you know, someone's touching their bum every time they walk past the desk, or someone comes and rubs their shoulder while they're leaning over looking at what they're working at, or all those kind of get things that give you the creepy crawlies, right? That's physical abuse, right? So that workplace, that's why I like the other model, because it includes the workplace. That workplace where you have to spend, you know, 8, 9, 10 hours of your day is something that needs to be as healthy as possible, right? So, let me move on here. I want you to have a look at table 1.1 and table 1.2, which are right by where the model is in the book on page 8 and page 9. So these are quite disturbing, I think, the data that are in these tables. When we look at table 1, they're looking at adults as a whole, right, across America. The number 1 cause of death, not right now, because everything's a bit weird right now, but normally the number 1 cause of death in the States is heart disease. And if you stay in HPE, you'll take some classes that will talk a lot about cardiovascular health and disease. But you know, a lot of cardiovascular disease, heart disease, is based on lifestyle, right? So it's based on keeping all these elements healthy. Not all of it. There is a strong genetic component, so if heart disease runs in the family, then you are more at risk of developing heart disease. But you can mitigate the risk by the way you run your life, right? So I think that's important to understand, is that if I can keep all this healthy, then even if it's a genetic disposition, I'm less likely to develop that problem if I stay healthy, right? And then the second, the 10th is suicide, which I thought was quite, like the 10th cause of death in the States is suicide, which I think is quite upsetting, you know. And it seems to be getting worse right now. Not this spring, I suppose, but usually in the spring there are some walks by a group that raises money to try to help or stop suicides. And so lots of people, families who've lost family members, you know, come together and do this big walk and raise money. It's really cool. But you hear some such sad stories when you attend an event like that. And you just think, wow, how did that person get to a point where that was the only way to put it right, you know? I think more disturbingly, if you go to table 1.2 and you look at Americans aged 10 to 24, suicide is now the second leading cause of death in the age 10 to 24. That's shocking to me. You know, I mean, I know I had a lovely childhood. My parents got divorced and that was pretty ugly. But on the whole, I had a lovely childhood. We weren't rich, but there was always food on the table. We always had a house to live in. I always got to go to school every day. You know, didn't seem great at the time, but when I look back on it, right, that was a pretty good childhood, right? I would never even have imagined thinking about that. So that's just shocking to me. And suicide and cancer are still there when we look at the next age group. So, you know, this idea of mental health, psychological health, spiritual health is really important because these people lost something, right? There was something not there that they could not hang on to. I read a piece last week, I think, and a young man committed suicide. I think he was in his early 20s, and he had written a note to his family. He suffered with depression and had medication and things, and he wrote a note to his family, and he just said, "I'm so sorry, but today the demons won out." One day, you know, and it snuffed out like that, right? So it's just really something I think that is very, very much in the media at the moment, is the level of psychological mental illness that we are seeing. in populations at the moment. And that I think that's something that when I was your age, I wish people had talked about and shared, so that there was something that I could understand about the way I was feeling, you know? So here we kind of go back to this idea of physical fitness in a way, although they do all link together, right? So that's important to understand. This is quite recent data, 2017. I suspect the picture will be worse when the next lot of data comes out. The CDC.gov, so that's the Centers for Disease Control, collect this data, and usually we get a report like every 2 or 3 years on this information. In 2011, I believe it was, they changed the reporting system. So it's difficult to compare data from 2011 onwards to earlier data because the way it was collected was slightly different. But you can, hopefully you can see here that we have this is in 2017, so I'm not sure if this still holds true. 3 places, so there's nowhere in the States anymore that reports less than 20% obesity in adults. So there isn't a state that can report less than 20% of obesity in their adults, right? Colorado, Hawaii, and DC are the only places to report 20 to 24.9%. Then we've got a large, all the kind of yellow areas are 25 to 29% adult obesity. And the orange areas, which is a vast swathe of the country, as you can see, is 30 to 35% obesity. This one's interesting to me. I don't know what that is. What's that state?
I can't see what you're pointing at. It's Maine or Vermont, or Massachusetts, Vermont.
There's Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Connecticut. I don't know what that is. So that seems like a bit of an anomaly that in this area of 25 to 29%, we suddenly have one little place that is 30 to 35. And I'm not sure why that happens. And then, very disturbingly, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 states that report over 35% adult obesity. So that's pretty shocking. And it's concerning for many reasons, right? The obvious one is the health issues that people in this population suffer with, and that costs them a lot of money and us a lot of money and the government a lot of money, right? Because your insurance premiums go up and up and up, they never come down, right? So those insurance premiums get bigger and bigger and bigger as the insurance companies have to pay out more and more for people being unwell. And the risk of cardiovascular disease, so that's a heart attack, stroke, coronary artery blockage, type 2 diabetes, what else? Sleep apnea, a whole slew of health issues that are linked very tightly with obese situations. So we've got, you know, the straight physical problems of being obese. It's very difficult to move if you're that large, right? very difficult. So, you know, it's a kind of easy fix to say, well, why don't they move more? But try moving when you're 350 pounds, right? It's difficult, right? And think about what an obese person looks like. You know, they tend to have a lot of subcutaneous fat around their arms and their legs and their belly. So it's not even like they can't walk. They have to walk, right? It's not comfortable. It's not fun, right? And you don't get an immediate payback. So you've got to be very, very patient to deal with that problem, right? So that's the physical, but think about those other domains, right? We've got social domains. So it might be very difficult for someone who is obese to find friends or find a partner, perhaps. Maybe not, right? Depending on their personality. Your self-esteem can be knocked constantly, right? So you want to fly home and visit your family, and the airline makes you pay for 2 tickets because you don't fit in a seat, right? Or, let me show you an example that is embarrassing, right? There's the seat we provide in the classroom. What if you don't fit on there? Imagine how awful that must feel. How embarrassing to come to class and not fit on the chair, right? So I think, you know, obesity has many, many, many issues that impact those domains that we were looking at. Okay, and this picture's getting worse right now, not better. And we have obese children as well as obese adults. This is only the adults, right? This isn't even looking at the state of the children, which is getting pretty bad. And there's some links, if this is of interest, this particular topic to you, I've got some web links to the CDC, also on the note pages underneath the PowerPoint, so if you open it up as a note page, there are a couple of other links there to take you to valid sites to learn some more information about that. Questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, right? You don't want to listen to me all the time. If you were here in class, we'd be doing little group discussions and things. So come on, jump in and give me some thoughts.
Oh, this is Tafari, by the way. But I believe, yeah, you were right. I would definitely be embarrassed if I couldn't fit in the chair or any chairs that's offered in public, period. I mean, so that's why I believe it's important for us to be healthy and be able to, you know, move around and do things that we normally do as humans.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you. You know, and the thing is, we have to catch these individuals before they get there, right? Because once they're there, helping them move becomes very complicated. So what are we willing to change in the school system, or, you know, even in the university system, right? When I came, this is my 15th year here. When I came here, undergraduate students were required to take a health and wellness type class. They were required to take activity classes in order to graduate, right? So the first thing that went away was the health and wellness type idea, right? They ditched that. And then when they had to cut the degree plans down to 120 hours, the first thing that went was the activity classes, right? So even in what is supposed to be an environment, an academic environment of knowledge, the first thing to go is the movement. It's got to change, right? It has to change. We have to change that mentality. Otherwise, this picture isn't going to improve.
So I don't know if you've seen this show before, but I've been hooked on this show. It's called My 600 Pound Life. I don't know if you know about it.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So these people, like, they will have, like, go through stuff, and then, like, usually, like, they're not the overeating and all the good. Go home and go crazy in the kitchen.
Yeah. There is.
So usually it'd be like, it's like a mental issue or something going on in their lives that makes their coping mechanism or something like that.
Yeah, it can be that food is the one thing they have that makes them feel good, and so that starts the cycle. For a lot of obese people, there are some switches in the chemicals in their brains and other hormones in the system, and so they don't get to a point where they feel full up like we do, right? So you know when you overeat, right? And you like eat really quick because you're in a hurry, and you eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and about 10 minutes later you're like, oh good grief, why did I do that, right? And your stomach feels, they don't get that. They don't have that sensation, and so that makes it difficult to stop eating, right? So yeah, I have heard of that show. I probably should make a little bit of effort to watch some of it. But yeah, you know, seats anywhere. And I'll admit, this is horrible. This is something that I'm not proud of myself for. But when I fly home to the UK, can be a 10-hour flight, right? And I'll be sitting at the gate for the international flight, and I'll be looking at all the people that are sitting around waiting for the gate to open for that plane, and I'll be looking at them and I'm like, oh God, I hope I'm not sitting next to that person. Or, oh, I'm gonna spend the whole flight squished up like this, right? It's awful. Like I said, I mean, it's not something I'm proud of, but I know I do it every single time because I don't want to be the person sitting next to the person that is hanging over the edges of their seat and taking up my space, right? And it's not their fault. The airlines don't accommodate that, right? It's not their fault, but I know that's my attitude going in, right? That's not very pleasant of me, right? I'm judging that person. I'm trying not to judge them. I'm just trying to say I don't want to sit next to that person, right? I'm not trying to judge why that person is that big, right? And that's a process. Don't start judging them. You don't know anything about their life, right? I just don't want to sit next to them, right? What a horrible thing to think. But
hey, I get to go. I totally understand.
yeah, I do it every year. We fly home every year. I catch myself doing it. You know. Yes, confession time here. Where are we? Oh, it's the end of class and I didn't finish. Okay. Well, there are. Hopefully, you read the chapter. You heard about the Healthy People 2020, that's just finished. It'll be a year or so before we get that data. My suspicion is that there'll be very few states again. No state met the Healthy People 2010 guidelines, not one single state, not even Colorado, which is typically the healthiest state in America. My suspicion is that very few, if any, states will have met the goals for the Healthy People 2020. We're waiting on that data. Please make sure that you look at, if you have not read this chapter, make sure that you look at the diversity in health and look at the minority health status disparities, because that can be very shocking. And given where we live, it's right in our face every day, right? I talk too much. This is the problem. I just talk too much. Okay, and then there's a slide there, things to really think about, right? As I said, use this class to really dig in to your personal belief system, your lifestyle, your, what do you want long term for your health and wellness? Okay? All right, well, thank you very much. Tafari, thank you for all your input. That was super. Makes my day. It's much easier to do this job when you guys engage with me, so thanks very much for that. Have a super day. It's a beautiful day if you're here in town. Go out and enjoy it. And I will see you Friday for our trail walk. If you're in town, come join me. All right. Bye.